And the next topic will be submitted by Arturo Flores. He is a biologist from the National School of Biological Sciences, and he has a PhD in ecology from the UNAM, where he got the Medal of Gabino Barreda. He has also been professor in BA and postgraduate studies, and he has a master's and PhD related to ecological topics and evaluations of environmental impact. He's part of the Ecological Society of America, Society for the Advancement of Sciences, Botanical Association of Mexico, and was chairman of the Ecological Scientific Society. Has published magazines. From 2003 until now has performed in different positions within the Secretariat for the Environment and National Resources, SEMARNAT. Right now he's Director General for Statistics and the Environment. And right now he will be talking about information on water problems and challenges. Good morning to you all once again. Let me tell you before I start my presentation, I want to tell you an anecdote. When you submit as a professional, when you are at the professional examination, you think that the students are the ones that are worrying, are the students, but it's the professors who suffer more. And when you want to make a presentation in the fifth place, that several other speakers have already submitted this, because it is the turn at which you speak when you can offer original material. The talk I was originally to present were challenges on the environment. If we were go over our talks yesterday and the conference of today, I'll have to repeat, as we saw yesterday, as we saw today. So last night, while I wasn't able to sleep, I thought I had to change my presentation. And well, first I said I will reformulate it, and then I reached the conclusion that it was worse to reformulate it. So I will present challenges and problems, but I will submit them under the viewpoint of a user, reflections of a user, but a specific user for different reasons. First, because in the Directorate for Statistics, which I head, we are users of information, but we use statistics in many different ways. We have to work with a process of asking for information from these foreign sources. And well, sometimes it's not provided, or it's incomplete, or it is not updated. And we have to do something about the material to have information. But not only this, we have to receive information and submit it to the public. We have a window of information. We have to organize, disseminate, organize, review, and try to present the information in an appropriate format. We also have environmental indicators. We are responsible for the environment. We have not only to present it, but analyze it and integrate it. And in this process, we are faced by many problems. And lately, in a very interesting process, but very complex in nature, we have been participating with INEGI and many state secretariats in the shaping of geographic information and the subsystem of geographic and environmental information. So I would like to refer to my reflections to this coordination and institutional process. So basically what I will be doing in the next few minutes is put on before you 5 topics of importance, thinking in terms of the users, thinking that this information must be useful for everybody, for the users. The first item has to do with something discussed yesterday, which is the amount, the quantity. The example was very clear, presented by Elena Kotler, on the need for more information, to have a precise estimate of the basins and qualities of water. How many stations would be needed for her to carry out her job? It was 1,400 basins, so the basins for each basin, and have the stations, the upper, medium, and lower part to understand the working process of the basin. But the number of stations left was 20,000, the network of monitoring stations. So, and I asked myself, can we do this? And well, we would also have to think that the number of parameters that were estimated were insufficient. Right now, anybody who examines history or background in regard to water, those who worked many years ago, they know that in water there were 18 parameters, then we went down to 9, and then it was like the song of the 10 little Indians. We have DVO, very different systems, and in the last year we only reported DVO. So we can imagine the complexity for a specific project. The amount of information and infrastructure can be analyzed. And I asked myself if we could have a simpler process in order to choose and filter information. And well, what we have to say is that, yes, truly, yesterday was stated that we have to be in touch with all those who produce information and the users of information. And the users embraces everybody, those who use the information for management, and users, academicians, researchers, and public in general, who is directly interested. But when you carry out an exercise to know the information you need, there's an enormous amount of information. We get many requests of information through the email. I want to know, for instance, the amount of solid waste material from the municipality of Fresnillo in Zacatecas from 1990 to 2010, separated by type of waste. It's a valid request. Can we have this information? Can we carry out a project for this information? And this would apply to basins. And now that I was looking at the presentation of the water footprint, the amount of information that would be needed. So it is clear that we have to follow a procedure to determine what is it we can produce, what can be produced by the government and institutions, and what is it we cannot produce. But we must have this very clear in our minds, and we must have clear in our minds an analysis with the participation of the government and the users in terms of priorities. Not only this, but also determine what level of itemization. At many meetings, and probably the friends in INEGI know this, we are requested the chart of in different scales to determine changes in the use of land at the municipal level. And in order to do this, it takes us 15 years. And if it'll take you 15 years and we need annual changes, our exercise will be useful, but everybody asks for it.
Let's see how far, who needs it, and see who the user is going to be. Not only have interesting information, but what's the purpose of the information, who's going to use it to establish the priorities. And then out of those that will be chosen, we have to select them, that they have the good quality, that they are adequate, and that they have sufficient spatial disaggregation. That's what we should do. And for more complicated scenario, this process that can be ever so complicated, it is very dynamic. Once we have gathered the type of information, it's likely that in 5 years we'll have to change it. The needs for information change all the time, so we have to have a procedure, a method that will enable us to make the changes. 15 years ago, nobody asked for meteorological information, and now it turns out that the meteorological stations do not suffice, but they were not even used until the weather the climate change is forcing us to have the stations, and how can we rebuild the hydrometric network as well as our meteorological stations network. Now, the topic I'd like to refer here is what we call the information metadata, or the documentation, the birth certificate, whatever you want to call it. Now, the data in that graph refer to the amount of geographical information, layers of geographical information that we have at SEMARNAT in the past 6 years. I'd like you to see the blue curve. Between 2007 2008, we had layers of information that got apparently lost. It was not because of an earthquake or anything, but that information was there. It was created, but we have no documentation on who gathered it, who compiled it, who put it together. So we have many reports from government about the environmental fragility of the country. And we wanted to see who compiled the information. Nobody knew anything about it. Everybody was clueless. Everybody visited the different government agencies to try to rescue the geographical metadata. But we were not able to, we had to discard 12% of the information we had because we did not know how this information was created. It was not reliable, how the environmental fragility was calculated, and for all logical purpose, it was useless. So we need a better documentation. Now look at the curve down below. This is the sewage, coverage in the country. These are presidential information. This indicator is in the sectorial program for water. So we have to be robust with the information. But you see, it's a strange behavior, abnormal behavior. All of a sudden it jumps, it's peculiar, it's a strange curve. So maybe we invested too much budget, maybe we finished our works, public works. No, what happened is that these are calculated in a way, and then the accounting and census of the INEGI has to be carried out, and we never get concerned by the previous years, and they are never documented. So you look at the information and you used to analyze the logical information. You say, maybe they are putting a spoon and taking out a spoon in the information and mixing everything because we have no background on that information. There are things that might look trivial. These are graphs are very much alike. Statistics from 2007 and 2008 on water, they have exactly the same heading. They represent the main thing, the volume of the main dams in the country. But if you look at the figures, well, unless you have an eagle sight, you won't be able to see anything. But anyway, they don't tally. They don't tally in any way by 20%, just about 20%. Until you start scratching at the details, you find out that the information on the main dams that they have been hauling since 2005, they use different criteria to define their figures. Sometimes they have 52 main dams, sometimes 100 dams, sometimes 102 dams. Somebody who is clueless about the story can start wondering and say, they're telling lies to me, or they're inventing, or they just review the datums from 2006, 2007. The volume of the waters arose in the country in 12%. So both sources of information are bad. So thus the importance of the metadata and documenting the information. Now, what Carlos Guerrero mentioned, we have a title for the seminar, but review the portals of the main agencies, the way many laboratories are organized. The statistic information goes on one side and the geographical information goes the other side. So we need to integrate these both sources of information. The interpretation of the results of the stats that we see in the tables could make sense if we can show how they are distributed spatially, and not only look at the data, because we look at the data per state, per municipality, per region, without that spatial component. And the other way around, there's a lot of geographical information which is very important for the statistical information that we are not putting to good use. And that's a waste. Now, yesterday during the panel, we said, yes, there are great amounts of information. Indeed, not only the government has information, the schools, the colleges. If you look at the stands here, there are oodles of information on water that we do not have in our own systems. We do recognize that. This is no mea culpa, but we are facing a serious issue trying to see how we're going to incorporate the information drawn from the academia, from the schools, from the research centers. And the great question is, should we include it? Well, yes, but not automatically. And why not automatically? Because I have been working in colleges and for the government. But two important things. One thing is the fact that we can guarantee that we will produce the information on a yearly basis. In the academia, that's difficult because our interests in the academia are different from the interests held by the government and by the users. So we need to follow rules. And something important that we say is that what academia does is well done. But since many of these data are produced in the academia, they are complicated to analyze. Yesterday, I had the chance to participate in many theme networks of CONACYT, one of them the ecosystem network, and we analyzed what information we had on the changes in the use of land in the country, and we found amazing quantities, amazing amounts of information on the changes in the use of land in Mexico, businesses, schools, offices, etc. So we should know what's happening in the country. Nevertheless, the truth is that we are clueless. When we review in detail how it was done, each one of the works uses different methods, different sources, different hypotheses. So this work can be well supported, well grounded, and it was published. But when you try to use it for a comparison to see if I'm going to invest more money in a municipality with greater deforestation, less deforestation, and I want to add these figures, it's so very difficult. So how to use this information to establish comparisons. Now, the last item I want to mention has to do with something we've been working on recently. For us to actually have a reliable system, well-grounded, with sufficient information, we must institutionalize the production of information in the country. What do I mean? I was yesterday the keynote speaker was asked if we gave less value to the information, and he said that no, in his own words, no, not in his own thoughts, but in the facts, yes. No, I think that information is highly recognized, but many units recognize that the access to information makes them vulnerable. So if I am not compelled or forced to provide information, I will not. So we need standard that will be mandatory for us to present information. Now, just to give you an example on the value of information, well, we thought that we were 104 million inhabitants. It turns out that we are 112. But many states did not want to accept these figures because that implied a change of their game. Imagine the Ministry of Health of a state thinking that he had 1 million inhabitants with a coverage of 80% in the health services. And of course, he thought he attained his goals, and it turns out that in a wink of an eye, his coverage goes down to 60% because he has more inhabitants. So the differences in the information is very important. So it's not an issue in saying the figures are right or wrong. This cannot be, because then all my puzzle will be ruined. So the information has a lot of value, but with many implications, and we must be a lot more rigorous and strict. in regard to our information. Now, I'm about to be finished, and Dr. De Alba mentioned it in his conference. How can we follow a reliable information process? And he spoke about the national system for information, statistic information, geographical information, and the environment. Of course, yes, this can be a model. In the case of the water, we have a specialized technical committee for the management of water with many agencies coordinated by CONAGUA, Zagarpa, Salud, SEMARNAT, and the Ministry for Ecology. And it's not closed. Many other agencies could participate where they are delving into important topics. There we should decide what are the national interest topics. What information in regards to the water should be produced mandatorily in every state? And not only that, what quality, what spatial disaggregation, what temporality? So in regard to the issues we have, that's decision. What decision are we going to make? And the other thing, how can we produce it? Because it's still important but for some users, but maybe this is not where we should focus all our efforts. It's a mechanism of coordination for the production of information. We don't want to duplicate it, and that the INEGI is cleaning the database of the meteorological networks, and that the Institute for the Atmosphere Sciences is also cleaning it, and face of the weather change. And at the end of the day, we all have different results, 3 doing the same thing, 3 duplicating the work, but 3 with different results. To establish indicators for the national catalog, not all the users who need the disaggregated information like many scholars and researchers. We have information that can be transmitted to the public, to the decision makers, and this is clue information that does not prevent the production of other information. Another important thing, how in an institution to establish the processes for the exchange of information. And if you review the portal of SEMARNAT and the portal of CONAGUA, many agencies, much of the information is duplicated. We all have information from INEGI. I have a lot of information from CONAGUA, and that's our game because we have not established a mechanism. Instead of repeating the information, maybe I could connect to their database. And that's what we talked about yesterday. Maybe we should work that way, not in silos. And to elaborate technical standards. Okay, let's agree on the way we are going to produce it and document what we're producing. Everybody wants to have information that can be reliable, that can be worked with, and this is a consensus I would like us to reach. That is all for my presentation. Thank you so much.